Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror franchise movie review video as part of my January 2023 series where I'm taking a look at all the Final Destination movies in the franchise. I've reviewed the first three movies. They're up on my channel if you want to check them out. Today, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the fourth movie in the franchise, known as The Final Destination, or Final Destination 4, if you will, from 2009. So yeah, this is a movie I'd never seen before. I saw I saw the first two movies and parts of the third one, as I mentioned in those reviews, like years ago, 15 years ago. But this movie I'd never seen before, and I've only heard through the grapevine that it's not really one of the better Final Destination movies. So I was curious to check it out. And so yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. Of course, it's part of my, like all my movies, it's part of my five pack here, the Final Destination five film collection. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. So the Final Destination, also known as Final Destination 4, is a 2009 American 3D supernatural horror film written by Eric Brass and directed by David R. Ellis. And both of those two were also involved in the second movie. So 2 and 4. Um, David Ellis directed the second movie as well as this one. It's the fourth installment in the Final Destination film series and the second standalone sequel after the Final Destination 3. Produced by New Line Cinema, the film follows a group of people after they escape a car crash during a race, with death stalking and killing them one by one. So that's sort of the premise. As far as how the movie opens, so in 2009, college student Nick O'Bannon watches an auto race with his girlfriend Lori Milligan and their friends Hunt Wynorski and Janet Cunningham at the McKinley Speedway for the semester break. Nick suffers a premonition of an accident from the racetrack that sends debris into the grandstand, causing its front stretch to collapse. When Nick panics, a scuffle breaks out and several people leave the stadium, including Lori, Hunt, Janet, racist tow truck driver Carter Daniels, mother Samantha Lane, mechanic Andy Kuzer, his girlfriend Nadia Monroe, and security guard George Lanter. As Nadia berates the group, a stray tire flies out of the stadium and decapitates her. One of the nights following the accident, Carter goes to George's house to burn a cross on his lawn, blaming the guard for preventing him from saving his wife Cynthia at the speedway. But his tow truck ignites him and causes him to be dragged down the street before it explodes and lights him on fire. So that's sort of the beginning of the movie, The Final Destination from 2009. That's as far as the cast goes. We have Bobby Campo as Nick O'Bannon, Chantel Van Santen as Lori Milligan, Nick Zano as Hunt Wynorski, Haley Webb as Janet Cunningham, McKelty Williamson as George Lanter, and Krista Allen as Samantha Lane. So yeah, that's to set up the premise and the cast for The Final Destination from 2009, the fourth movie in the franchise. Um, I have to say, a lot of people that I talked to or that I heard watched the review videos for that said this movie was the worst in the series. I can't say that definitively yet because I haven't seen the fifth movie. Obviously, that'll be coming up, that review and movie watch here in the next week. But I can say of the first four movies, they're right. This is definitely a step down from the first three movies for me, which I really enjoyed. All three of them to various levels. If you watch my reviews on those movies, so yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. First, I'm going to praise this movie for the things I like about it before I really rip a new one into it here, which is going to be the majority of this review. So, but let's start friendly with the pros. I do like the opening and ending credits with the X-ray type images that they use, showing some of the previous deaths from the prior movies, especially at the beginning. I thought that was pretty different and interesting, and I did kind of like that. I thought it was pretty cool. Um, yeah, it was different. I mean, it's not the best opening of any of them with the opening credits. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was different and unique. So that's one thing I can say. The movie is fast paced with a short effective runtime. So the movie that has its problems, as you'll hear in a few minutes here, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not really a slog to get through, even though how can I put it? There's problems with the movie, but it's short enough where you're not spending too much of your time in a place you don't want to be, if that makes sense. It'll make sense more as I get into my cons. But so the movie, yeah, it is very fast paced, very action packed. It does have an effective running time, not to overstay its welcome, and it's fairly easy to watch from a time standpoint. You're not, I think it's only like 81 or 82 minutes that you're committing to watching this movie, which as you're gonna hear shortly is a good thing. So that I definitely liked about it. The one character I liked was George, played by McKelty Williamson, as he actually had a backstory and some character development, having had a wife and a child who were killed by his own actions in a car accident, and how he tries to purposely join him later in the movie when facing death's inevitability. He decides that maybe I should just let death come for me, and he kind of forces the issue. Of course, death has its own plan. So I kind of liked that whole thing with his character and that backstory and kind of where he takes it. I thought the movie did a pretty good job with that, and I have to say, McKelty Williamson's probably one of the better actors in this movie, which, as you're going to hear again shortly, doesn't really say much. But yeah, that's the one character that I liked in this movie. Let's see. The movie has some good location set pieces, like the car wash, the mall, the last third of the movie, and the whole pool scene with some crazy action and high production value stunts, and especially at the mall. The mall at the end of the movie in the third act has the most stunts, the most action, I would say, probably the most production value. But yeah, it's got some very nice set pieces. You can tell that the movie definitely had, again, it's like the production value of these movies as they go on increase more and more, which doesn't necessarily make them better, but it's clear that they sort of expand the set pieces a little bit more in the stunts and the action, and that's definitely the case in this movie. So, um, let's see. I'm hard pressed to find more pros here. Um, some of the kills are creative, I have to say, like the guy looking to burn a cross on the other guy's lawn, being caught by his own tow truck's tow hook, and then being lit on fire as it drags along the ground and sparks a fire as gas is pouring out of the back of it. That was a very satisfying kill, because if you watch the movie, you know that this is one of the worst and most cliched characters that you could possibly have in not just a horror movie, but any kind of movie. He's a racist. Let's just be honest about it. Your typical cliched redneck, and I'm not saying, again, I don't want to get into this, but not everybody that enjoys NASCAR is a racist. I get that. I don't necessarily even think that's what the movie was trying to say, but certainly there are some parallels there that the movie makers were trying to say. But he's just not, he's a very bad character, and so you kind of enjoy his death. It is very satisfying, but it's more from the creative kill standpoint. The movie does have some creative kills. That one definitely comes to mind, as well as the pool drainage kill, which I'll get into that more with my cons. But from a creativity standpoint, while it's absurd, it is creative. So yeah, a couple of very creative kills. And then I like the fact, like I mentioned in the last movie, I like how this movie doesn't change the rules or add too much. Doesn't get too convoluted the way the second movie did. It kind of knows what it is. It knows that the viewers know what's going on by now. It knows the story of these Final Destination movies. So it doesn't need to or set up a lot of new rules, which make it convoluted. I appreciate that. You kind of know what to expect, and it's pretty much what you get with this movie. So yeah, that's those are my pros for the Final Destination from 2009. Now let's get to the crux of this review. Getting on to the cons. Got to start with the CGI, man. If you've watched my reviews, if you know my channel, most people don't like CGI. I despise CGI, and this movie has some of the worst CGI, the most obvious, terrible CGI I've ever seen in any movie, not just a horror movie. It's god awful. It's so noticeable. It completely took me out of the movie. They way overused the CGI in both the visions and the premonitions, as well as the kills that you get throughout the movie. These kills and the premonitions basically look like you're watching a video game, or like a modern cartoon or something, like a Toy Story type of cartoon. It's so over the top. It's so cartoony, so video gamey. It's terrible. Also, the 3D gimmick, it completely takes away from what a Final Destination movie should be, and ultimately it allows the filmmakers to, instead of putting any time or intelligence into this movie or putting any effort in terms of the writing, instead it just relies on that gimmick. and the kills related to it by having, oh, this is a 3D movie. We don't have to worry about having any deep characters or any story or plot. We can just focus on the kills and make them as fun as possible with the 3D and the CGI that are involved with the 3D. It's just, yeah, it's not good. The characters, other than George, as I mentioned in my pros, are the worst in the franchise so far. Completely paper thin, completely cliche. Um, no development whatsoever. So therefore, there's no reason to care about any of them as they are in danger, or as any of them actually get killed, whether it's in a premonition or in real life. Because if you know these movies, you know that a lot of characters end up dying twice on screen. They die in the premonition, and then they end up dying in real life. So yeah, it's they're the worst set of characters, other than George, like I said in my pros. Especially the main character, Nick, who's played by Bobby Campo. Definitely the weakest main character protagonist in any horror movie that I've seen, frankly, not just this series. It goes without saying that of the first four movies, because again, I can't speak to the fifth one yet. I haven't seen it. He's definitely the weakest. I mean, it's not even close in my opinion. Um, yeah, he's terrible. His acting is terrible. His character is poorly written. He has zero chemistry or believability with Laurie, played by Chantel Van Santen, his girlfriend, who's also not good in the movie from an acting standpoint. Nobody's good in this movie from an acting standpoint, other than a little bit from McKelty Williamson, as I mentioned. Everybody else is dog shit when it comes to acting in this movie. And again, you could say all these Final Destination movies aren't exactly known for their acting, but this is the worst. This one is definitely the worst in terms of acting and character development, or character writing for that matter. There's no tension or suspense whatsoever in this entire movie. This movie is basically a cash grab movie. It's taking the Final Destination name, throwing some cheap 3D gimmicks at it, and getting money from it. It's a cash grab movie. It really is. I mean, the first three movies, you can say what you want about them as far as being similar to the previous one, but they all sort of had, there was intelligence in those movies. There was something more there. There was something more to say, if you will. This movie has nothing to say. It's basically taking the template of the first three movies, throwing the 3D gimmick at it for nothing but a cash grab. That's the best way I can sum this movie up, quite frankly. The cash grab with the 3D gimmick and for the kills. That's basically all this movie goes for. And the kills themselves are so laughably bad in terms of any, I don't know how to put this, but when I say any semblance in reality, I know then you could roll your eyes and say, well, none of the movies have a lot of these kills don't take place in reality, but I disagree with that. I think in the first three movies, you do have to definitely um uh what's the word I'm searching? Suspend. You have to suspend your disbelief a little bit with all these movies. In this movie, it's beyond suspending your disbelief. I mean, a guy basically having his organs sucked out of his ass through a pool drain. Yes, you heard that right. If you haven't seen the movie, a character gets his internal organs sucked out of his ass through a pool drain. And while the pool drain death is interesting, the execution of it is god awful, like most of the deaths in this movie. This, it would never happen. These deaths. There's another guy that gets like a like a tank that like a an air tank that propels itself into him, and he gets pushed into a not even a it's like a wired fence, not like you'd actually see at a mechanic shop, like an actual you know a regular like metal fence. I don't know why words are escaping me right now. Um, but you actually see his body go into the fence, and like parts of his body fall out. Very CGI, very cartoony. Yeah, again, it's just the kills are ridiculous. They're not even fun in my opinion as a result. The opening premonition as well. I like all these opening premonitions in the first three movies to various degrees. I'll probably rank those in my final ranking with the movies as well. This is the worst again, and I hate to keep saying that, but the whole NASCAR wipeout accident, it's the weakest of all the movies so far. It doesn't work for me at all. There's also no build up before it with the characters or the plot like there is with the other three movies. Well, you're kind of getting to know them. You're building up suspense. They're already at this race. All this even happens before the opening credits, which is another really weird thing. Um, yeah, again, it's just the best way to sum up this movie is it takes the template of the first three movies and just does everything poorly compared to those three movies. Like it's just such a lesser movie than the first three movies. And my final con, in case you haven't had enough yet, the score of this movie is really weak. Really weak. Much more of a cartoony action kind of score than it is like a Final Destination or suspenseful horror movie score. It's just awful. Um, so yeah, those are my cons for the Final Destination from 2009. And I tried to be open minded going into this movie because I knew from what a lot of people said it is the weakest of the franchise. I will say the movie does have rewatchability for me. I guess if you want to call this another pro, that's fine. But it's not on the same level as some of the worst horror movies I've seen, like Freddy's Dead or Halloween Resurrection. It is. I could see rewatching this movie again. Now, if I'm watching a Final Destination movie, it's certainly not going to be. It's certainly not going to be one that I go to right away.